Shalom, 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 everyone. This is Joy, and today is Thursday, January 18th, 2024. And the title for today's lesson is Torah is for all nations, okay? And I apologize if I'm talking kind of low. It's early in the morning. My son is still asleep, so I tried to come out here early this morning to get this recording done before he wakes up. But anyway, so the Torah is for all nations. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. And I put a special note at the top, and it says, Torah is our Heavenly Father's laws, statutes, and commandments, which is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, which is the gift of His Holy Spirit to all mankind. Okay, and that's just, I just wanted to put a brief or general definition of what Torah represents. And for those of you all who aren't familiar with what the word Torah is, it's the Hebrew word for the word law. So when you go back to the Old Testament, everywhere where you see, where it says Abba Yahuwah gave the Israelites his laws or commandments, that's what that word Torah means. And if you want to look that up in the Strong's Concordance, it's going to be the number H8451. Okay, so if you look up H8451, it's the word Torah, okay, which means his laws, statutes, and commandments, and any other commandments that he gave to us, okay? And you can actually look that up in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 8. When you see the word law there, just look that up and you'll see H8451 for Torah, okay? Alrighty. So the first verse we're going to look at is Ecclesiasticus chapter 15, verse 18 through 20, okay? So Ecclesiasticus chapter 15, verse 18 through 20. And also, just to let you know, some of these verses that I'm going to be reading from, I actually have a Sefer book translation. And this book is basically the same as the King James Version, but some of the books that have been taken out have been added back to it. So that's why I have this book. I also will be reading from the King James Version along with it. But for the books that aren't in the regular King James Bible, if you hear me say some different books that you've never heard of before, it's actually going to come from the Sefer book. Okay? And Sefer is spelled Cepher. And that's just a Hebrew word name for book. So Sefer means book. Okay? Alrighty, so back to the verse. Ecclesiasticus chapter 15, verse 18 through 20 reads, For the wisdom of Yahuwah is great, and he is mighty in power, and beholds all things, and his eyes are upon them that fear him, and he knows every work of man. He has commanded no man to do wickedly, neither has he given any man license to sin. Okay? So the emphasis there is verse 20, and what I want you to see there is where it says, he commanded no man to do wickedly, neither has he given any man license to sin, okay? So when you see no man or any man, that means no one. It doesn't matter what nationality, race, or background or culture you come from. No man and any man means just that, okay? And so that's why I wanted to start off with that verse, because I wanted you to see that. It says that he commanded no man to sin, and he gave, it says, neither has he given any man license to sin, okay? So that's going to be key to remember that throughout all the rest of these verses, okay? So speaking to everyone, okay? All right, so from there we're going to go to 1 John chapter 3, verse 4, just so we can lay our basis for what sin is. Okay, so 1 John chapter 3, verse 4 says, Whosoever, okay, so here's another word, just like no man and any man from the previous verse. This says, whosoever commits sin transgresses also the law. And again, in this version, the Sefer, instead of it saying the word law, it says Torah, okay? But it's the same thing. Torah is the law. So whosoever commits sin transgresses also the Torah, or the law, for sin is the transgression of the Torah, okay? So that's your definition of sin. Whenever you transgress the laws or the Torah of Abba Yahuwah, that's when you've committed sin. You've basically gone out of bounds of the way or the path that he showed us to keep, and now you've gone outside of that, and that's how you've committed a sin. Okay. Alrighty. So now we're going to look at, well, if that's what sin is, to not keep his commandment or his law or his Torah, then what is wisdom and understanding? Okay. So for that, let's look at Job chapter 28, verse 28. So I'm going to turn there. Okay. So Job chapter 28, verse 28 says, and unto man, okay, so unto man, that's just anyone, that could be male or female, that means mankind. So, and unto man, he said, behold, the fear of Yahuwah, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. Okay, so I want you to see that there. If you don't want to sin against his Torah, but you want to be accepted in his sight, then you have to have wisdom and understanding. And so by this verse, it says that the fear of Yahuwah is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. So from this verse, we can see that in order to be acceptable in Yahuwah's sight, we have to fear him, fear Abba Yahuwah, and depart from evil, which is wisdom and understanding. Okay? All right, so now we're going to turn to Jeremiah chapter 11. Let's see, and we're going to read verse 1 through 4. Let's see. Okay. Jeremiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 4 reads, the word that came to Jeremiah from Yahuwah, saying, hear ye the words of this covenant, and speak unto the men of Judah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and say you unto them, thus says Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, or Yasharel, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of this covenant, which I commanded your fathers in the day that I brought them forth out of the land of, it says Mitzrayim, and that's Egypt, from the iron furnace, saying, obey my voice and do them. Excuse me. I'm going to get a drink of water real quick. Excuse me, sorry about that. Okay, we'll start at verse 4 again. It says, which I commanded your fathers in the day that I brought them forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, from the iron furnace, saying, obey my voice and do them, according to all which I commanded you, so shall you be my people, and I will be your Elohim. Okay? So the emphasis there is on verse 3, and he said, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of the covenant. So again, in this context, he is directly speaking to the tribe of Judah and the land of Jerusalem. But again, just remember that even though he might be speaking directly to them at this point in time, we will see scriptures later on as we keep going that will confirm that this not only will apply to the children of Israel or the 12 tribes of Israel, but it will eventually apply to all nations and all men, male and female, so all mankind, okay? Alrighty. So he says, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of the covenant. So basically, if you don't keep the commandments, then that means you're going to be cursed. And that came directly from Abba Yahuwah. That was the statement that he said, okay? So just remember that. All right, so now let's look at, so what are the words of the covenant? All right, so the words of the covenant are all the statutes, judgments, commandments, which makes up Torah. And you can find that in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1 through 13. Okay, so let's turn there and we'll read that. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1 through 13 reads, now therefore hearken, O Yasharel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that ye may live, and go in and possess the land which Yahuwah Elohim of your father gives you. You shall not add unto the word which I commanded you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that ye may guard the commandments. In this Bible, this translation says the word guard, but it's the same word as keep in your King James Version or other versions, okay? So if I say the word guard, it means keep, but I'll try to say keep instead. So it says that you may keep the commandments of Yahuwah Elohim, which I commanded you. Your eyes have seen what Yahuwah did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, Yahuwah Elohim has destroyed them from among you. But ye that did cleave unto Yahuwah Elohim are alive, every one of you this day. Behold, I have taught you commandments and judgments, even as Yahuwah Elohim commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes, and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who has Elohim so nigh to them, as Yahuwah Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great, that has commandments and judgments so righteous as all this Torah, or the law, which I set before you this day? Only take heed to yourself, and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But teach them your sons and your sons' sons, especially the day that you stood before Yahuwah Elohim in Horeb, when Yahuwah said unto me, gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me. Okay, like we said before, that's what wisdom is in Job 28:28. That they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And ye came near and stood under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire unto the midst of heaven, with darkness, clouds, and thick darkness. And Yahuwah spoke unto you out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only ye heard a voice. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10, it says commandments, but the Hebrew word there says 10 devarim, which means commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. Okay. So what I wanted you to see from those verses was it said in verse 6. Let's go back to that. It says, keep therefore and do them, meaning the commandments or the law or his Torah. So keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding. And remember in Job 28:28, we just saw that from that verse it said that understanding means to depart from evil. So when you keep his commandments, that's how you depart from evil. Because if you don't keep it, then that's basically evil. You're cursed if you don't keep the commandments. Okay. So back to verse 6. Keep therefore and do them. This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. So that's what I wanted you to see. It says in the sight of the nations. And what is the purpose of that? So that way when the nations, they were supposed to see Israel keeping the commandments or keeping Torah. And it was supposed to cause them to say, what nation is there so great that has commandments and judgments so righteous as all this Torah or all this law, which I set before you this day? And that was in verse 8, okay? Alrighty. So basically, those verses tells you what the words of the covenant are, which is all his laws, statutes, and commandments, okay, which makes up Torah. And it was supposed to be done in the sight of the nations, okay? So obviously there was a purpose behind them doing it. They weren't just supposed to just keep the commandments just for no reason. It was supposed to provoke the other nations, basically, I guess, to jealousy and say, you know, wow, we want to be like those people. What are they doing that's so great that's causing them to be such a great and wise and understanding people, you see? Alrighty. So now we're going to go ahead and look at 1 Baruch chapter 4 verse 1. So let me turn there. Let's see. I'm going to get another sip of water real quick, so excuse me. Okay, let's see. 1 Baruch chapter 4 and verse 1 reads, "This is the Sefer, or book of the commandments of Elohim, and the Torah, or law, that endures forever. All they that guard or keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die." Okay, so that's pretty plain and clear. So basically, just once again, it says, all they that guard it or keep it shall come to life. So basically, you'll live, but all that leave it shall die. Okay, so if you don't keep the commandments, you're going to die. Okay, alrighty. So now we're going to look back at Ecclesiasticus. Let me turn there. And we're going to look at chapter 41, verse 8 through 10. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Ecclesiasticus chapter 41, verse 8 through 10 reads, "Woe be unto you, wicked men, who have forsaken the law or Torah of Elohim. For if ye increase, it shall be to your destruction. And if ye be born, ye shall be born to a curse." Okay, and that ties right back up there to Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 4, where in verse 3 he said, "Cursed be the man that obeys not the words of the covenant." Okay, so same thing. It says, "If ye be born, ye shall be born to a curse. And if ye die, a curse shall be your portion. All that are of the earth shall turn to earth again, so the wicked shall go from a curse to destruction." Okay, so basically, right there it said the word curse 3 times. Okay, let's see, did I read all of them? Yes, okay, through 10. So basically it's just saying the wicked men who have forsaken the law or the Torah of Elohim, it says you're going to be born to a curse, and if you die, a curse will be your portion. And it says basically you're going to return to the earth, and it says, so the wicked shall go from a curse to destruction. So not only are you going to be cursed for not keeping his laws, statutes, and commandments, or his Torah, but you're going to be cursed, and then you're going to go from a curse to destruction, which obviously that's going to be for eternity. So that's basically not a good situation to be in. Okay, alrighty, so now let's look at Ecclesiasticus chapter 19, verse 18 through 19. Alright. So Ecclesiasticus 19, verse 18 through 19 reads, "The fear of Yahuwah is the first step to be accepted of him, and wisdom obtains his love. The knowledge of the commandments of Yahuwah is the doctrine of life, and they that do the things that please him shall receive the fruit of the tree of immortality." Okay, so basically it's confirming everything we've read so far. It's basically just telling you that in order to fear Yahuwah, the very first step that you need to do is to be accepted of him, is to keep his commandments, and wisdom obtains his love. And that's where you're going to find wisdom in Torah, in his laws, statutes, and commandments, okay? And then it says, basically, if you keep the commandments, then you're going to have right to the fruit of the tree of immortality, okay? And that's the exact same thing in Revelation 22:14. So let's turn there real quick. I didn't write it on the notes there, but I have it above that scripture in my book. So Revelation 22, verse 14. Okay. Revelation 22:14 says, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. So those two verses confirm each other, okay? And it's interesting because in the King James Version, it says, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life." But if you read any other version, I think the New King James says that too, but if you read any other version like the NIV, ESV, all those other versions, it says, "Blessed are they that wash their robes." So if you see that phrase, "wash their robes," that's what it means to wash your robes, is do his commandments. So when you do his commandments or keep his commandments, his law, his Torah, that's how you wash your robe, okay? I just want to throw that in there because I've mentioned that before in a previous video, but I just want to mention that again. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and move forward. So let's look at 4 Ezra or 2 Esdras. So in this book, the Sefer book, it's labeled as 4 Ezra because you have 3rd and 4th Ezras, but it's also 1st and 2nd Esdras in other older versions of the Apocrypha book, okay? So if you ever see 3 Ezra or 4 Ezra, just know that 3 Ezra is 1 Ezra, Esdras, and 4 Ezra is 2nd Esdras, okay? Alrighty. So 4 Ezra or 2 Esdras, chapter 7, verse 29 through 45. Let me turn there. Okay, let's see here. Okay. So 4 Ezra or 2 Esdras, chapter 7, verse 29 through 45 reads, "After these years shall my son Mashiach die, and all men that have life, and the world shall be turned into the old silence 7 days, like as in the former judgments, so that no man shall remain. And after 7 days the world that yet awakens not shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. And the earth shall restore those that are asleep in her, and so shall the dust those that dwell in silence. And the secret places shall deliver those souls that were committed unto them. And Elohim shall appear upon the seat of judgment, and misery shall pass away, and the long suffering shall have an end. But judgment only shall remain, truth shall stand, and faith shall wax strong. And the work shall follow, and the reward shall be showed. And the good deeds shall be of force, and wicked deeds shall bear no rule. Then the pit of torment shall appear, and opposite it shall be the place of rest. And the furnace of Sheol shall be disclosed, and opposite it the paradise of delight. Then Elohim will say to the nations, that have been raised from the dead, Look now and understand whom ye have denied, whom ye have not served, whose commandments ye have despised. Look on this side and on that. Here are delight and rest, and there are fire and torments. Thus he will speak to them on the day of judgment, a day that has no sun or moon or stars, or cloud or thunder, or lightning or wind, or water or air, or darkness or evening or morning, or summer or spring, or heat or winter, or frost or cold, or hail or rain or dew, or noon or night, or dawn or shining, or brightness, or light, but only the splendor of the glory of El Elohim, by which all shall see what has been determined for them, for it will last for about a week of years. This is my judgment in its prescribed order, and to you alone have I shown these things. I answered and said, O Yahuwah Sabaoth, or that means Yahuwah of hosts. I said then, and I say now, blessed are those who are alive and keep your commandments, or guard your commandments. Okay, so from those verses, he said a lot of information, but the main thing that I wanted you to see was in verse 37, basically the scene is that this is Judgment Day, and all the nations have been raised at this point. And so in verse 37, Abba Yahuwah says, It says, then Elohim will say to the nations, so this means all mankind, okay, not just the nation of Israel, but all nations. He says, that have been raised from the dead, look now and understand whom ye have denied. Okay, so he's saying you have denied me, basically. Whom ye have not served, so obviously the nations have not served him, whose commandments ye have despised. So he says, you have despised my commandments, okay? And this is what he's saying to the nations. And yes, this does include wicked Israelites who have failed to repent and keep his commandments as well. So not only the nation of Israel that failed to do these things, but all other nations as well, okay? So that's very important to get that from verse 37, okay? And then he says, verse 38, look on this side and on that. Here are delight and rest, and there are fire and torments. Thus he will speak to them on the day of judgment. And the reason why I put that down is because when he says, look on this side and on that, so where he says, on this side are delight and rest, that reminds me of those that are on the right hand of Yahusha and those that are on the left hand. And that's going to be in Matthew chapter 25, verse 31 through 46. So let's turn there real quick and read that. Excuse me. Okay, Matthew chapter 25 and verse 31 through 46 reads, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations. Okay, just like we've been seeing in all these verses, it's all nations, not just the nation of Israel, but all other nations as well. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, okay, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and skip down to verse 41. It says, because he tells the ones on the right the reason why they're coming in, right? So now look at verse 41. He says, then shall he say unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed. And again, and I didn't even catch that myself, that matches the verses above in Ecclesiasticus chapter 41, verse 9, where he said a person would be cursed because they didn't keep his commandments. And also in Jeremiah 11, verse 3, where he says, cursed be the man that obeys not the words of the covenant. So Yahushua's repeating the same thing. It says, to them on the left, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepare for the devil and his angels. So he even tells you the purpose of torments is it was never meant for man. It was supposed to be for the devil and his angels who sinned all the way at the beginning. And you can find that in the book of Enoch. But for those wicked men who refuse to accept Abba Yahuwah's covenant, which is all his law, statutes, commandments, his Torah, and it's also the faith and testimony of Yahusha. But for all those wicked people who despise his Torah, his law, they're basically going to be cast into the same pit of hell or fire with the devil and his angels, okay? So I hope you see that. But, and then verse 46, it says, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, speaking of the wicked, the cursed, the ones who didn't keep the Torah or the law, but the righteous into eternal life. So the ones who did keep his law, statutes, and commandments, his Torah, they're going to go into life eternal, okay? All right, but let's go back to Ezra chapter 7. All right, so basically, in verse 45 again of Ecclesiasticus chapter 7, he says, I answered and said, O Yahuwah Sabaoth, or Lord of hosts, I said then and I say now, blessed are those who are alive and keep your commandments. Okay, so obviously I hope you're seeing by now with all these verses, it's a blessing to keep his commandments, but it's a curse if you don't. Okay, And it's just interesting because, again, I grew up in the Church of Christ, and as a child, I remember specifically there were different points in time when I would hear the preacher say, you know, if you try to keep all the commandments, or if you try to keep one commandment, you have to keep them all. And if you don't keep them all perfectly, then you're going to be cursed. And so it's amazing how those times I heard that was a literal lie. That's the complete opposite of what Abba Yahuwah was saying this whole time. Okay, so those were some of the lies that we inherited. But that's not true, because obviously with all these verses I've shown you, it's the opposite. If you keep the commandments, you'll be blessed and you'll have eternal life. But if you don't, you'll be cursed and you'll suffer in torments and fire with the devil and his angels. Okay? Alrighty, so we'll keep moving on. So now let's go to 2nd Baruch, and we're going to look at chapter 11, verse 1 through 2. So let me turn there. Let's see. Okay, 2 Baruch. Okay. And all these verses that I'm going to read next, they all connect. Okay, so I'll show you how they connect. So, chapter 11, verse 1 through 2 reads, Moreover, I, Baruch, say this against you, Babel. If you had prospered, and Zion had dwelt in her glory, yet the grief to us had been great, that you should be equal to Zion. But now, lo, the grief is infinite, and the lamentation measureless. For lo, you are prospered, and Zion desolate. Okay? So just I wanted you to see that from these two verses, he's speaking about Babel, correct? And when you see the word Babel, that's synonymous with Babylon, okay? So Babel or Babylon, that's who he's speaking to. This judgment is against Babylon or Babel, okay? Okay, so now let's look at chapter 12, verse 1 through 4. And it reads, But I will say this as I think, and I will speak against you, O land. So again, he's still speaking of Babel or Babylon. He says, which are prospering. The noonday does not always burn, nor do the rays of the sun constantly give light. Do not expect and hope that you will always be prosperous and rejoicing, and be not greatly uplifted and boastful. For surely in its own season shall the divine wrath awake against you, which now in long suffering is held in, as it were, by rains. Okay, so he's telling Babel or Babylon, don't think that you're always going to be prospering, because there's going to be a day that comes of the divine wrath. And that's in verse 4, okay? But just remember that in verse 1, he said, I speak this against you, O land, which are prospering. So Babel is this prospering land, okay? That's what I wanted you to see. They're prospering right now, but he says it won't be forever, okay? So now let's look at chapter 13, verse 1 through 12. And it reads, And it came to pass after these things that I, Baruch, was standing upon Mount Zion, and lo, a voice came from the height and said unto me, Stand upon your feet, Baruch, and hear the word of El Elohim. Because you have been astonished at what has befallen Zion, you shall therefore be assuredly preserved to the consummation of the times. Okay, and that's the great judgment, okay? When you see the consummation of the times, that's the great judgment or great tribulation that's going to come upon the whole world. Okay? It says that you may be for a testimony, so that if ever those prosperous cities, okay, so here's the word prosperous cities again, so we're still talking about Babel or Babylon. It says, why has Elohim brought upon us this retribution? So these prosperous cities, or Babylon or Babel, there's going to come a time when they're going to say, why has Elohim brought upon us this retribution? So this retribution is the same as the consummation of the times, or it's the great tribulation, okay? All right, verse 5. So he says, say unto them, so this is what Baruch is being told to tell those prospering cities, or Babel or Babylon. It says, you and those like you, okay? So now we're seeing it's not just Babel or Babylon, it's them, but it's also anybody else who's like them. So any other nation or prospering city who resembles Babylon or has become like Babel or Babylon, okay? So he says, you and those like you, who shall have seen this evil, the great tribulation or retribution. It says, this is the evil and retribution which is coming upon you and upon your people in its destined time, that the nations, okay, here we go, here's all the nations again, may be thoroughly smitten, and then they shall be in anguish. And if they say at that time, for how long? You will say to them, ye who have drunk the strained wine, drink ye also of its dregs. The judgment of the lofty one, who has no respect of persons. Okay, that phrase is familiar. You can find that in Acts chapter 10, verse 34 through 35. Okay, that's what Peter says. I perceive that Yahuwah is no respect of persons, but in every nation he that fears him, which is wisdom, and worketh righteousness, which means to keep the Torah, keep the laws, is accepted with him. Okay? So we'll just go over that again. So it says, the judgment of the lofty one, who has no respect of persons. On this account he had aforetime no mercy on his own sons, speaking of the 12 tribes of Israel, but afflicted them as his enemies, because they sinned, okay, which means not keeping the law, not keeping Torah. Then therefore were they chastened, that they might be sanctified. But now ye peoples and nations, so this is everyone else other than Israel, ye are guilty, because ye have always trodden down the earth, and used the creation unrighteously. For I have always benefited you, and ye have always been ungrateful for the beneficence. Okay, so that was the end of that verse. All right, but, so we saw in verse 4 how he said, you and those like you, so we already declared that was speaking of Babel or Babylon, and anyone else who has modeled themselves after Babylon or taken up the same pattern, okay, that Babylon has taken up. And then in verse 9, I want to point this out. It says, on this account he aforetime had no mercy on his own sons. Okay, you're going to find that in Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 19. So let me take you there real quick. Let's see. Okay, Jeremiah, and go ahead and read that whole chapter so you can get better context. But verse 19 specifically says, and it shall come to pass when ye shall say, so he's speaking of Israel or Judah and Jerusalem, they're going to say, wherefore does Yahuwah Elohim all these things unto us? Then shall ye answer them, like as ye have forsaken me, and served strange Elohim in your land, so shall ye serve strangers in a land that is not yours. Okay? So that is what Abba Yahuwah told Jeremiah to say to the tribes of Judah and Jerusalem when they start asking you, why has Yahuwah brought all this, judgment against us? He said, it's because you've forsaken me and served strange Elohims or other little gods in your land. So now that you've done that, you're going to serve strangers in a land that is not yours. So just like how Judah and Jerusalem asked that, why did God or why does Abba Yahuwah do all this to us? Now you're going to see a role reversal, and it's going to be all the nations saying the same thing. And that's what we just saw in verse 9, okay, of Ecclesiasticus chapter 13. So now all the nations are going to say the same thing, okay? Alrighty, so from here, we're going to look at chapter 14, verse 1 through 2. So let's look at that. Alright, so chapter 14, 1 through 2 says, and I answered and said, lo, you have shown me the method of the times, and that which shall alter these things, and you have said unto me that the retribution, or great consummation, or great tribulation, which has been spoken of by you, shall come upon the nations. Okay, just like we've been saying this whole time. And now I know that those who have sinned are many, and they have lived in prosperity and departed from the world, but that few nations will be left in those times, to whom those words shall be said which you did say. Okay? Alrighty. And so, let's see. So I was trying to look at my notes here. Alright. So I think we've completed that for chapter 14. So now we'll look at chapter 15 and verses 1 through 8. Okay. So it says, and Yahuwah answered and said unto me, you are rightly astonished regarding the departure of man, but you have not judged well regarding the evils which befall those who sin. And as regards what you have said, that the righteous are carried off and the impious are prospered. And as regards what you have said, man knows not your judgment. On this account hear, and I will speak to you, and hearken, and I will cause you to hear my words. Man would not rightly have understood my judgment unless he had accepted the Torah or accepted the law, and I had instructed him in understanding. But now, because he transgressed wittingly, yea, just on this ground, that he knows thereof, he shall be tormented. And as regards to what you did say touching the righteous, that on account of them has this world come, so also again shall that which is to come on their account. For this world is to them a strife and a labor with much trouble, and that accordingly which is to come, a crown with great glory. Okay, so from those verses, I want you to see in verse 5, it says that basically the Torah is understanding. Okay, so when you keep the Torah or the laws, that is understanding. And remember in Job 28 verse 28, he said that understanding is to depart from evil. So when you keep his commandments or keep his Torah, that's how you depart from evil, and that's how you become one of his righteous ones. Okay, alrighty. All right, and now we're going to look at chapter 48, verse 32 through 40. Okay. All right, so Ecclesiasticus chapter 48 and verse 32 through 40 reads, and it shall come to pass in those days that all the inhabitants of the earth shall be moved one against another, because they know not that my judgment has drawn nigh. And that, that goes back to what we just said when we saw the word, the consummation or the retribution or the great tribulation. This is the judgment that has drawn nigh, okay? All right, for there shall not be found many wise at that time, and the intelligent shall be but a few. Moreover, even those who know shall most of all be silent. And there shall be many rumors and tidings, not a few, and the doings of phantasmata shall be manifest, and promises not a few be recounted. Some of them shall prove idle, and some of them shall be confirmed. And honor shall be turned into shame, and strength humiliated into contempt, and probity destroyed, and beauty shall become ugliness. And many shall say to many at that time, where has the multitude of intelligence hidden itself? And whither has the multitude of wisdom removed itself? And while they are meditating on these things, then envy shall arise in those who had not thought aught of themselves, and passion shall seize him that is peaceful, and many shall be stirred up in anger to injure many, and they shall rouse up armies in order to shed blood, and in the end they shall perish together with them. And it shall come to pass at the selfsame time that a change of times shall manifestly appear to every man, because in all those times they polluted themselves, and they practiced oppression, and walked every man in his own works, and remembered not the Torah of Elohim, or the law of Elohim. Therefore a fire shall consume their thoughts, and in flame shall the meditations of their mind be tried. For the judge shall come and will not tarry, because each of the inhabitants of the earth knew when he was transgressing, but my Torah, or but my law, they knew not by reason of their pride. Okay, so that sums up the whole reason why all these nations are going to be judged. It's because they weren't keeping Yahuwah's Torah or his law, and it was on account of their pride, or pride was the reason why they chose not to keep his laws and commandments or his Torah. Okay, so I definitely wanted you to see that it's all due to pride. Okay, so basically we're going to look at Okay, now I did write off to the side 2nd Baruch chapter 39 verse 1 through 8. So let's go look at that real quick. All right, so 2nd Baruch chapter 39 verse 1 through 8 reads, And he answered and said unto me, Baruch, this is the interpretation of the vision which you have seen. Excuse me. And so if you want to read the vision, just read a couple of chapters above that. I would start maybe at chapter 35, maybe. Start there and go through to 39. But I just want to go ahead and go to the interpretation, okay? Because I want you to see something. So he says, verse 2, As ye have seen the great forest, which is lofty and rugged, mountains surrounded, this is the word. Behold, the days come, and this kingdom will be destroyed, which once destroyed Zion. Okay, and we're going to keep reading, but I just want to tell you, this kingdom he's speaking of is Babylon, or Babel. So the same Babel that he was speaking of in chapter 11, 12, 13, and 14, and 15, it's a continuation of all those judgments against Babel, or Babylon, okay? All right, so this first kingdom, which is Babylon, will be destroyed, which once just destroyed Zion. Just like he said, they were a prospering city, and they were prospering over Zion in chapter 11. Okay, and it says, excuse me, I'm sorry, let me get some water. I apologize. Okay. All right, so let me just start over again. So verse 3, Behold, the days come, and this kingdom, which is Babylon or Babel, will be destroyed, which once destroyed Zion, and it will be subjected to that which comes after it. Okay, so if you know anything about, the history in the Bible, Babylon was the one who took over the southern kingdom, Judah and Jerusalem, and then after them came the Medes and the Persians, okay? So Babylon is going to be subjected to that which comes after it, which is the Medes and the Persians, okay? Verse 4, Moreover, that also again, after a time, will be destroyed. So the Medes and Persians will be destroyed, and a third will arise, and that also will have dominion for its time and will be destroyed. So the third kingdom that comes after the Medes and the Persians is the Grecians, okay, the Greeks. Okay, verse 5, but they're going to be destroyed too. So verse 5, And after these things, a fourth kingdom, which we know is Rome, will arise, whose power, whose power will be harsh and evil, far beyond those which were before it. So this kingdom is going to be way worse than the kingdoms that came before it, right? And it will rule many times as the forest on the plain, and it will hold fast for times, and it will exalt itself more than the cedars of Lebanon. And by it the truth will be hidden, and all those who are polluted with iniquity or sin will flee to it, as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. Okay? And it will come to pass, when the time of its consummation, which is Rome, that it should fall, has approached, then the principate of Mashiach, which is Yahusha, will be revealed, which is like the fountain and the vine. And when it is revealed, it will root out the multitude of its host. And as touching that which you have seen, the lofty cedar which was left of that forest, and the fact that the vine spoke those words with it, which you did hear, this is the word. Okay. So, and you can continue reading through chapter 40 if you'd like to get, the rest of that information as far as what's going to happen to the last leader of that kingdom. But basically, the main thing I wanted you to see was in verse 6, where it says, And by it, so we're speaking about the fourth kingdom, which is Rome, it says, by it, the truth will be hidden, okay? And all those who are polluted with iniquity or sin will flee to it, as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. So that's just a very important thing to understand, is that that's what happened with the truth. it was hidden by this fourth kingdom. And if you have any kind of a historical background with Rome, the kingdom of Rome, and all the different things that happened at that period, you know, one of the major things that happened was the Roman Catholic Church. And they are the ones who canonized the Bible. They were the ones who decided what books to put in and which books to keep out. So basically when it says, by it the truth will be hidden, well, one of the things they did was when they took out some of those books, some of the very books that I'm reading, just like this book Baruch, it was taken out. Okay? And so it's interesting how he's telling you exactly what happened. And we know that for a fact because for a long time, all of our modern day Bibles, like the King James Version and newer versions, they didn't add these books in like Baruch or Esdras or Ecclesiasticus or the book of Enoch either. Also Jasher, Jubilees, other books like that. And so they have fulfilled what he just said here. By it, the fourth kingdom, Rome, the truth would be hidden. Okay? But there are prophecies that the righteous in the latter times would receive those books, like the books would be given to them and they would become a source of pride and great joy for them. So praise Yah that he's allowed all these books to come back to us so we can glean more wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from them, in addition to his Torah and his law, statutes, and commandments. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted you to see that because I thought that was very interesting how it said by it, the fourth kingdom, the truth would be hidden. And we've definitely seen the results of that happening, you know, at this present point in time. Okay. All right. So in conclusion, we're going to jump to Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15 through 19. So let's turn there real quick. All righty. So the conclusion for all these verses that we've seen, that Torah is for all nations, because now you see that, you know, there were several places where he said he commanded no man to do wickedly and he didn't give any man license to sin. We saw verses where it said whosoever doesn't keep his commandments, you know, they're transgressing his laws, things like that. So now let's look at the conclusion of all this. So Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15 through 19 reads, and this is Moses speaking. It says, Yahuwah Elohim will raise up unto you a prophet from the midst of you, of your brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken. So, of course, Moses is speaking to the children of Israel, and he's telling them that at a specific point in time, Yahuwah is going to raise up this prophet from among the Israelites, okay? And this prophet is going to be like Moses, okay? And he's the one that we're supposed to listen to and hear. And we know that he's speaking of Yahushua HaMashiach, the son of Abba Yahuwah. Okay, verse 16. According to all that you desired of Yahuwah Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahuwah Elohim, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. And Yahuwah said unto me, they have spoken well that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever, okay, just like in 1 John chapter 3 verse 4, where he said the same word, whosoever. So whosoever means whosoever, okay. It shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. Okay? And I mentioned in previous videos when I've went over this verse, when you look at the word require in the Strong's Concordance, it means to be demanded, or it means something that has a great demand and to be sought out by blood. So basically it means to be judged, okay? But you can look that up in the Strong's Concordance. All right, so Abba Yahuwah just said, whosoever doesn't listen to his words, and we know that his words comprises all his law, statutes, commandments, which is the Torah, what we've been seeing this whole time. So whosoever doesn't listen to his words that this prophet is going to speak in his name, he said, I will require it of him, okay? So let's get that confirmed. So let's look at John chapter 12, verse 44 through 49. So let me turn there. And let's see what Yahusha says. Okay, so John chapter 12, verse 44 through 49 reads, Yahusha cried and said, He that believes on me, believes not on me, but on him that sent me. Okay, just like we saw in Deuteronomy. Abba Yahuwah said he was going to raise up a prophet amongst the children of Israel, correct? And he's going to be like Moses. So Yahusha is confirming. He says, if you believe on me, you don't really believe on me, but you believe on him that sent me. And then verse 45, and he that sees me, sees him that sent me. So when you see Yahusha, you see the Father. Verse 46, I am come a light into the world, that whosoever, okay, here's this word whosoever again, believes on me should not abide in darkness. And if any man hears my words, just like Abba's words, and believes not, I judge him not. For I came not to judge the world, but to save the world. He that rejects me and receives not my words has one that judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. Okay? For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. And then we'll go ahead and read verse 50. It says, and I know that his commandment is life everlasting. Whatsoever I speak, therefore, even as the Father said unto me, so I speak. So that sums up what we've been speaking about this whole time. Verse 48 again, he says, he that rejects me and receives not my words has one that judges him. The word, which is Abba's Torah, all his law, statutes, and commandments, the word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. And I have proven that to you now with all these other verses that we went over about the nations and how Abba Yahuwah told them directly. He says, see now who you have rejected and the Torah that you've despised, my laws that you've despised. So basically that's the end of this lesson. So I hope that you see now from all these verses that the Torah, which is Abba's law, statutes, and commandments, and any other words of wisdom that he's given unto us in his book, his word, his Bible, it's not just for the nation of Israel. It's for all nations. And, you know, obviously that was another lie that the Gentiles have inherited, that the commandments were just for the Israelites. You know, Gentiles don't have to do that. We don't have to keep that. Well, according to all these verses I've given you, it proves the opposite of that. And that's why these nations are going to be judged, because they despise his Torah or all his law, statutes, and commandments because of pride. And so that's pretty much the end. Obviously, there's plenty of other verses that you can find that will confirm what I'm saying here in these scriptures that I've given you today. So I'm going to allow you to do that on your own time, and just see if you can find any other verses that go with this, because it's so vital for us to know at this point in time that, you know, even though people have been told this for years and years, all their lives, generations, that, okay, we don't have to keep those commandments, those things are done away with. Well, you can clearly see that that's not true. And so if you don't want to be judged, you know, on Judgment Day for not keeping his Torah, then just continue to study his word, you know, pray to Abba Yahuwah about it, ask him in wisdom to help you see the truth. And if you do see this, then, you know, repent and keep his commandments, keep his Torah, so that way you won't be found on the wrong side of judgment on that great day of judgment. So just want to say thank you for coming back for another lesson. I pray that everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you, Abba Yahuwah, so much for your word and your truth, and for allowing us this time to still be able to put the truth out there so that others can hear it and have an opportunity to repent and come back to your word, so that way they can be one of your blessed ones, one of your righteous ones, and make it into your kingdom and into eternity. So thank you, Abba Yahuwah, and I pray everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Shalom.